Welcome to CivilNet. Today we're going to be talking with Lusine Kharatyan, who heads DVV International. This is a German organization that works on cross-border conflict resolution, confidence-building programs. And we're going to talk about a very special program, a program I found very special, that they concluded last year. Lusine, thank you for joining us on CivilNet.
Thank you for inviting us.
You are representing DVV International, and DVV sponsored, I think, an amazing program with partners in both countries, Turkey and Armenia. So on the Armenian side, it was Hazarashen, and on the Turkish side?
On the Turkish side, it was Anadolu Kultur, and in Armenia, we had another partner, Armenian Actors Union. So.
Okay, and Armenian Actors Union, which is not often heard of as an organization involved in this kind of work, and Hazarashen, which really focuses on oral history, is that fair?
They are doing a lot of ethnological studies, but recently they have worked with us on many oral history projects, including this one.
Okay. Now, the definition of the project was what?
Well, the project title is Speaking to One Another, and it started back in 2009, but today we will focus on the last phase of the project. And it was bringing students, young people from both sides, from Turkey and Armenia, into the very core of the issue, asking people to tell their own family stories. So we brought the oral history methodology into the very problematic Armenian-Turkish context and tried to bring students for them to interview themselves, people whose ancestors suffered from genocide or were living in the areas where Armenians lived.
And were either witnesses or actors.
Yeah.
So you combined two kinds of strategies. There are lots of programs, more than most people realize, that try to bring young Armenians and young Turks together to experience each other, get on a road trip together. So you took that and the oral history interviewing the descendants of the actors, of whatever kind actors, and you mixed those two together.
Yeah.
Over what time period?
Well, this last phase, because I'll focus on this, it took us like 2 years, starting from 2011, and it ended in January 2013.
And the whole group was how many people?
10 students from Turkey, 10 students from Armenia, plus...
And they lasted?
No, we had a lot of dropouts, and I'll tell about that.
Tell us about that.
Well, the core, let me just put the structure of the project for people to understand how it went. In this phase, we decided to choose a location in Turkey that was once part of Western Armenia or once populated by Armenians, and a location in Armenia where people originally from this same area are living now. So we ended up, after going to Diyarbakir, Dersim and Mush, we ended up choosing Mush as a location for our camp for students. And then in Armenia, of course, we had to focus on Tallinn region, where many people are coming from Mush, or their grandparents are coming from Mush. The project was structured so that students were divided into 3 different workshops, one being on oral history, which means the students will go to the field, talk to people, ask about their family stories. The second workshop was on photography, and people involved in these workshops would go to the field, make photos of what they see of everyday life or the history, how they witness it today. And the third group was performance. So students involved in this group had to go to field, collect stories, and bring back those stories into the stage and perform it.
And you keep saying students. These are college students on both sides.
These are university students from both sides, mostly from different social science backgrounds. And we had tutors for each group that were student participants from our project previous phases who grew up during the project and became tutors for newcomers. And we also had experts for each specific workshop. So it was quite a crowd, I would say. A lot of people involved.
And these students were selected, I assume, on some criteria.
We made an announcement, and there were applications received both in Armenia and Turkey. We shortlisted the applicants, we interviewed them, and we selected. The criteria we used were, first, they had to come from social science background, as I said, but they had to show really motivation and interest into both reconciliation and digging into past to build this reconciliation.
And we will see parts of the film that was produced as a result of this. We won't see all of it, but we will see a good segment of it, where it is very apparent that these are students who are both curious and really not a whole lot of information, not a whole lot of knowledge.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's a very intense, surprising sort of sets of interactions, I found. And I think the film pretty much demonstrates that.
I think that's true, and also just the project itself had two products. One was the film, which was about the project. So the documentary crew followed us throughout our adventures in Mush and then in Armenia. And the other product was this book, which is titled Mush, Sweet Mush.
Hold it up so that Azad gets it.
It comes from this Armenian song, probably you have heard, Mush, Kharatyan, Mush. And this book presents, like, it has essays authored by students from Turkey and Armenia, where they reflect on their experiences, but also incorporate the interviews they have made themselves, both in Turkey and Armenia.
I was moved by the essays. I found them both descriptive and also insightful. You feel the process that these students went through. But you say some of them didn't survive.
Yeah, so, okay, this started in Mush because...
The first stop was Mush.
Yeah, the first stop of the project was Mush, and actually it was a very hard time. Imagine that most Turkish students, they were from Istanbul, so they had a completely different background with just theoretical knowledge about the region and a lot of media information that this is the area where a lot of trouble happens. Kurdish terrorists are doing this thing and that thing and never experiencing this themselves. So for them it was a completely different world to come into, with all this Istanbul background and sophisticated cosmopolitan culture and so on. From Armenia, maybe it was a bit a project, I wouldn't say a mistake, but the group of Armenian students traveled together from Yerevan to Mush throughout the entire Western Armenia, with stops in Van, Kars, and then ending up in Mush. So they already built a group, a community that had a shared experience before getting into Mush, which meant that as a group it was more well formed. And plus they had completely different expectations from the area. That was their historical motherland they dreamed about and they wanted to see.
It's a dream place, yes.
So it's a completely different groups from the beginning. So imagine these groups coming together in Mush, and they have to go to field every day. By field I mean talk to people, see what is happening, what is going on in Mush. And
Mush is a hidden sort of city. It's not like Van.
Yeah, and it's a very conservative city.
Yes.
It has, like, religion is very strong in Mush, and most people are keeping to themselves. They are not that open to talk about things. Plus, on the second day of our arrival, a terrorist attack on a police car happened like 50 kilometers far from Mush. So this brought a different trend into the group itself. And just in a week or in few days, Van earthquake happened, making Mush epicenter for the help that was coming into region. So a lot of internal quakes and external quakes happened while we were in Mush. Yes. And some students from Turkey who were already like with a lot of trouble being in Mush got more of this trouble, and some of them dropped out at like in the mid of our Mush camp. But I would say it was also a project team decision where we said, you know, because of the earthquake, we don't want to stay here and be always nervous and stay in the hotel. So whoever wants to leave is free to leave. And some have chosen to leave.
You know, something that you said is something that we on the Armenian side of this complex relationship don't think about, and that is that we're the ones who are supposed to be suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome and all of that, right? Yet coming as they do, especially this generation of Turks, the tabula rasa, no background, that for them the learning curve from I know nothing to oh my God, this is my responsibility, is huge.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is also, imagine, but there is also this protection mechanism. You, as much as you want to know, you also want to protect yourself. So being in such a project and in the area where trouble always happens, bring you, like, there were a lot of things from Turkish students, which I would say were quite fair, saying, you see, my country has a lot of ongoing troubles at the moment.
We need to say the obvious. This is the interior, this is the eastern, the southeastern, where the Kurdish population has been making demands for decades, a lot of loss of life, tens of thousands. That's the context.
So it's like, why do we go back to the history, while the earthquake in Van happened right now, I want to go and help people who are suffering there right now. Or see, we go to the villages and we see the level of poverty, unbelievable in some places. So why don't we help these people who are living and suffering now, like girls do not have proper education, or there are a lot of needs in these areas.
Why not solve those?
Why not solve those and not talk about this instead of going back 100 years ago? And this is how our dialogue, internal dialogue, kept going back and forth. Armenians pushing towards the past, saying, okay, we see that all this trouble is happening, but we also think that this repeats itself because you didn't solve what happened 100 years ago. So this conversation was constantly there, and it was really hard for young people to survive the entire process.
And so now these were the internal challenges. What about the relationship with the people in Mush and trying to elicit memories, stories, confessions?
As you will see, the readers who will read the book also will see that it was quite hard to get really honest and open stories from people in Mush. And we had to always be very political in the way we were trying to make people diplomatic. Yeah, not political. Sorry for right word.
Got it.
Thank you for right word. So we had to always open people layer by layer, and sometimes we succeeded, but in most cases it was really hard. For example, once we went to this Changili village, which is formerly Saint Karapet monastery. Everybody knows how famous was it for Armenians and how proud Armenians are of this monastery. And there was a person who got so angry, he just got out of his house, he started like screaming.
And that's in the film?
Yeah, and it is in the film, saying that I am tired, every day these people are coming to my village, get out of here, I don't want to see you anymore. Well, because a lot of Armenians are visiting the village every day and people just get tired, this enters their life. For them, history is also now, because every day these people are visiting their village and they do remind them of past every time. In other instances, we really had people who volunteered to come and tell their stories. But then after several, they said, okay, we want to tell, but then they refused and disappeared, kind of. We couldn't find them anymore.
And so we're talking to people without the expectation that they will come out and say, gee, you know, my grandfather was Armenian. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for any sorts of memories.
Yeah, that's true. That's correct.
Whether it's my grandfather says, you know, that he hid the Armenians or he killed the Armenians or I am Armenian.
And I think that the fact that history has not been really processed in these areas and many issues were not addressed ever, that makes this problem even deeper and more problematic because people don't know what to tell. They don't know what, I mean, the history they know from books is different and history they hear from their parents is different. And here these Armenians are coming and asking questions, so they really sometimes don't know what to answer and how to address these questions that are asked to them. Some are even used to tourists visiting from Armenia. For example, we met this one guy in one of Mush villages. He made a corner of his own with an Armenian cross stone that he protects. But he is quite a guy waiting always for Armenian tourists to tell a story. So this also becomes part of their commercial life, I would say, in a way, because some know that visitors would come and they get prepared. They have stories ready to tell every time. But this is only very few people who are that way. The rest really prefers silence or not talking, or finding diplomatic ways of presenting the past and present they live in.
Thank you for both doing the project and sharing it with us. And I think that as our viewers watch parts of the film, The Beginnings, that was produced as a part of this project, produced by Gor Baghdasaryan and...
Somnur Vardar is the film director from Istanbul, and Gor was responsible for...
the camera work.
Yeah, for the camera.
I think that a lot of what you say becomes really apparent. The book is here in our library at Sivilitas, available both in Istanbul and in Yerevan from the organizations Hazarashen and Anatolu Kultur, and of course DVV International. Hats off to them. Good work.
Thank you for inviting us.
Stay tuned. Keep following us on CivilNet. I've been talking to Lusine Kharatyan of DVV International, who headed the project Speaking to One Another, a project that brought together students from Armenia and Turkey to understand both themselves and their common history.